The signal is given from the firing room to ignite the 5 F-1 motors on the bottom of the Apollo 11 Saturn V moon rocket. Those F-1 engines are the largest, most powerful rocket engines ever built, 33 feet long and 12.3 feet in diameter. F-1 engines burn rocket propellant 1 or RP-1 and carried liquid oxygen. You measure the power of a rocket motor in pounds of thrust, and each Saturn V F-1 engine made more than 1.5 million pounds of thrust for a 5-engine total of more than 7.6 million pounds of thrust. All of that thrust was used in 2 minutes and 45 seconds when the Stage 1 tanks were empty and separated from the rocket.
15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo.
The hold-down clamps are released and those F-1 engines begin to do their work. The Saturn V rocket was the largest rocket ever built, 363 feet tall, 33 feet in diameter, and it weighed over 6.5 million pounds at liftoff. Of those 6.5 million pounds, only 1.5% were headed to space. The rest were there just to do the heavy lifting. It launched from pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, and this pad was used for 12 other Saturn V launches and 82 space shuttle launches. When you visit Kennedy Space Center, you can stand under an actual Saturn V moon rocket and then walk outside and see the same launch pad. That pad is now used by SpaceX for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy launches, and the Kennedy Space Center bus tour will take you up close for a good look. We're 66 seconds into the mission and the Saturn V moon rocket is breaking the sound barrier. Each surface creates its own shock wave, and the Saturn V moon rocket was designed with 2 shock waves, one up by the capsule and one back where the first stage joins the second stage. Those shock waves work together to create a shadow over the rest of the rocket to allow for a more efficient transition into supersonic flight.
We're going to flight. Good at 1 minute, Cap, now.
Oh, 11 Houston, you're good at 1 minute.
Downrange 1 mile, altitude 3, 4 miles.
NASA is currently studying supersonic shock waves, and a brand new imaging technique allows us to see those shock waves actually form. SpaceX is famous for launching rockets and for landing them. And as a Falcon 9 comes back to land, it uses 3 landing legs. Each one makes a sonic boom. 1 minute and 23 seconds after liftoff, and the Saturn V moon rocket is experiencing MaxQ. That's the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Rockets must be designed to survive this maximum level of stress. If they're too weak, then the rocket crumples like a soda can. If they're too strong, well, that's just extra unneeded mass. Now, MaxQ is still a metric on modern launches and is always a point of interest on the webcast, including SpaceX Falcon 9 launches and the Falcon Heavy launch. Three minutes and 17 seconds after liftoff, and the launch escape tower is jettisoned. This is the rocket motor attached to the top of the crew capsule, designed to pull the crew away from a malfunctioning rocket. It's only useful up to 295,000 feet of altitude, and after this point, it's just extra mass. Lockheed Martin and NASA are building a new deep space capsule called Orion, and it has a similar launch escape system. In fact, NASA requires all human-rated vehicles to have a similar launch escape system, and SpaceX had to test their Crew Dragon before it could be certified to carry astronauts to the space station.
2, 1, launch.
Right now,
Engine
150
shutdown.
meters per second. Slightly below nominal. We're over 1 kilometer. Trunk deploy.
The computer on the lunar module was designed to make more calculations the closer it got to the surface of the moon. A switch was supposed to be flipped to change the calculation rate, and that switch was inadvertently left in the wrong position for the entire descent.
Program alarm.
And about that time, we got a computer alarm of
1202.
1202.
1202.
The computer was giving us trouble.
1201. 1201.
Well, it's extremely serious. Is the computer breaking? Is it telling us it's not functioning right?
1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. 47 degrees.
The
Roger.
computer was so busy and it couldn't get all the jobs done, so it was dropping off these other little jobs down on the end and not doing them. Where to go?
Roger, we got you. We're going at alarm. Okay, all flight controllers, go for landing. Retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for landing. Houston, you're go for landing, over.
These are the words of Charlie Duke, Buzz Aldrin, and Neil Armstrong.
Time forward.
The fuel states were falling, and we were getting close to what was going to be an abort situation.
And Charlie Duke gave us a call of 60 seconds.
Simple call, Eagle, 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
He had 60 seconds to land, and after that 60 seconds, it would be abort.
Down 2.5.
I didn't want to disturb Neil's concentration because I knew he was really working that problem.
2.5. Picking up some dust.
We used most of our remaining fuel, finding a relatively level and smooth landing spot.
2.5. 30 seconds.
He had 30 seconds to land. I mean, it was deathly silent. Now, I don't think he was going to actually abort. I mean, that wouldn't have been the right stuff.
And then they landed.
Shadow. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 30 seconds. Forward drift. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're going to be busy for a minute.
I looked over at him and he looked at me. And there was not a great emotion, but there was a smile of satisfaction on both of our faces. And
We shook hands.
The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
That you finally can say we just landed on the moon. We hit the moon with 17 seconds of fuel remaining.
It was almost 7 hours after landing before Neil Armstrong took that famous first step.
You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're going to be busy for a minute.
Armstrong is on the moon. Neil Armstrong, 38-year-old American, standing on the surface of the moon. On this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Armstrong was first, followed shortly by Buzz Aldrin. TV cameras caught those first moments, but the photographs were taken by Neil Armstrong, and that's why he isn't in most of the shots. The first few minutes on the moon gave us two of the most iconic photographs of the entire mission. Buzz Aldrin descending to the lunar surface, and a few minutes later, his famous boot print on the lunar soil. There isn't any wind on the moon, so the flag was made with a metal frame and springs so that it could appear to fly. It was knocked down and probably damaged by the lunar module liftoff and is certainly no longer standing on the moon.
Yeah, radio loud and clear. How's it going?
Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. I believe they're setting up the flag now. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
This communication is between the mission control
That's all right. I don't mind a bit.
and Mike Collins in the command and service module.
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
Up now. Beautiful, just beautiful.
Just after this, Neil Armstrong took one of the most famous photographs in NASA history. It's time for my favorite part. The science mission begins. Remember, this was the first practical exploration and evaluation of the moon, and the experiments range from simple to complex. Lunar soil varies from dust to rocks and boulders, and we needed to collect some of it, and that's why you see Neil Armstrong out kicking the moon. They deployed a seismometer to listen for moonquakes, and a solar wind composition experiment, and my favorite, the lunar ranging retroreflector. That's an assembly of mirrors that no matter which angle you hit it, it bounces the light directly back to the source. It's still on the moon today, and it's the only active science left from the Apollo era. We use it today to measure the distance between the Earth and Moon. Temperatures on the moon range from 260 degrees in the sun to negative 280 in the shade, and spacesuits must accommodate this change quickly and completely. Photo evidence of this test led to one of the most iconic Apollo photos of Buzz Aldrin with Neil Armstrong's reflection seen in the suit visor. After 2 hours and 15 minutes outside on the moon, the astronauts returned to the lunar module, closed the hatch, stored the science and suits, rested, and prepared to leave the moon. 13 hours and 17 minutes after the hatch was closed, the rockets fired in the lunar module left the surface of the moon on its way to rendezvous with the CSM that was still orbiting the moon. There was no video of Apollo 11 leaving the moon. This is the same event from Apollo 17.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector grid. X-Side.
And this is the view Mike Collins had as he watched the lunar module return. After 27 hours and 51 minutes apart, the crew of Apollo 11 were whole again and began to adjust trajectory to leave lunar orbit and head back to Earth. As the capsule re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, it began to experience friction, which became heat. The capsule was protected by an ablative heat shield. That's a plastic resin coating that upon heating turned to gas and carried the heat away. Unlike the shuttle tiles, this was a one-time use item.
Hornet reports a sonic boom a short time ago.
Apollo 11, this is Hornet, over. Apollo 11, reach your light core.
The capsule hit the water and inverted for almost 8 minutes. When it righted, the astronauts put on isolation suits and awaited recovery by the USS Hornet, a naval aircraft carrier. The Hornet is now part of a museum in Alameda, California, and it holds many historic aircraft, an Apollo capsule, and a mobile quarantine unit. The first steps of the Apollo 11 crew are painted on the deck, and if you visit, you can literally walk in their footsteps. And this is where the story ends for most of the world. However, the crew traded their isolation suits for the mobile quarantine unit aboard the Hornet. They were taken by ship to Hawaii and then by plane to Houston, where their mobile isolation chamber was connected to a larger living area. The crew was greeted by President Nixon and their wives, and on August 10th, 598 hours after liftoff, they were welcomed back into the world as heroes. To their credit, they always brought attention to the hundreds of thousands of Americans that worked behind the scenes to make the mission successful. Ladies and gentlemen, the crew of Apollo 11. Command Module Pilot Michael Collins, Commander Neil Armstrong, and Lunar Module Pilot Edwin Buzz Aldrin. All three were born in 1930, and Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin are still alive and will be a big part of this summer's celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission.